Good afternoon, everyone. This is the very first RotoPros DFS NBA midday showdown. I'm Chris Durrell. I'm here with Josh. How's it going today?
Doing great, Chris. Feeling good in sunny Miami, so things are nice.
Awesome. So, got a little feedback there.
Already?
Sorry about that, folks. Yeah, mistake right off the bat in our very first show. I'll make sure not to make that mistake moving on. But yeah, so what we're going to do here today is we're just going to go over the slate a little bit. And the most important thing, I guess, midday when we don't have all the news is just to talk about maybe the news, who's questionable, who's probably going to play, that kind of stuff. And if you're not a RotoPros member, you're going to want to go over. I'm just going to share my screen here real quick and just run everybody through how to get over and get your free trial. Get up that screen share here.
I don't know why you wouldn't want that free trial. It's free.
Yeah, so this is rotopros.com. If you're not a member, what you get access to, just go up and hit the sign up button. This is where we're going to find our articles. If you click up here on articles and click NBA, that's where you're going to find the NBA articles daily, NFL, NHL, PGA, soccer, NASCAR. We cover almost everything. But to get your trial, you're going to go up to sign up here in the top right-hand corner, and you get a 2-week trial. And what that gives you access to, everyone gets to see the articles, but what it's going to give you access to, I'm going to jump over here real quick, show you our community chats, a Slack chat. So we've got a bunch of different channels talking the different sports. We've got our daily content where we post our articles, cheat sheets that we have for every single sport, and then we've got our our schedules of what's coming out daily. We've got our RotoPros lineups, which is our skeleton lineups. Rob just posted his soccer stuff now. Dude is a magician when it comes to the soccer side of things. So there's a lot of stuff. We do one-on-one coaching. We do all that kind of stuff. So get over to rotopros.com, sign up for that 2-week trial. Pretty sure you're going to stick around for the long haul. We've got daily, monthly, and yearly plans, and I don't think you're going to be sorry. You're really going to maybe appreciate some of the stuff that we do offer. So definitely hit that up. So without further ado, I just want to show you real quick. I talked about my NBA sheet. Just want to kind of go over that real quick here. So on the first page, when you download that sheet, either from the Twitter account or from the article or even from the Slack chat where we provide it every day, you're going to see teams that are on back-to-back, teams that are on 3 and 4. You've got the matchups here. Blue teams are going to be your away teams. Green are home teams. And this correlates between like all my cheat sheets that I do for all sports. And then we've got each team's record, home, road, streak, points allowed per game. We've got the Vegas info. We've got fantasy points against each single position for the season, and then kind of a 1-week trend so you can kind of see where a team is going. And then we've got individual positions, which is going to show every player. It's going to show the same Vegas information there so you can compare. It's got FanDuel, DraftKings pricing, and then we've got stats here across the top. If there's any stats that you don't see that maybe you want to see in the future, just hit me up in the comments here. Hit us up on Twitter. Hit us up in the Slack chat. We will definitely help you out there and add everything that we possibly can. So some of the most important ones here, obviously you're going to be looking at minutes. You're going to be looking at usage. And then obviously the matchup every night. And then we've got injury status over here. And then what we've started doing here is highlighting players. So green is going to be like our core plays, cash games, GPPs, good all-around player. Blue is going to be like a GPP only play. And then the guys you see in yellow, they're going to be like your value plays. And then red or
Chris,
guys
I'm not sure if my screen's frozen. Hey, Chris, I'm not sure if my screen's frozen or you're not showing. No, I'm saying I think you're showing people the 2-week free trial right now.
Oh, maybe it's frozen. It's not. It's.
Oh, never mind. So then forget if it's work. Yeah, never mind. If it's working for you.
But I can see it now. I'm just looking at the YouTube, and I'm not. So we'll see if we can see it or not. Yeah. So if you can't, just make a comment in the thing, and if not, I'm going to go through another video, just kind of going over the NBA cheat sheet. But there's a lot of information on there. Can you see me talking now? I'm back to
I see
just
you
my
now.
face.
It's good now.
Awesome. It must have froze there. But anyways, I'll definitely have sheets or videos in the future just kind of going over. But what I was kind of getting at there is that we're looking a lot at minutes, looking at usage, we're looking at matchups, we're looking at injuries especially. And I was just kind of getting at there with the injuries. I kind of update that throughout the day as the injuries come in. So definitely be sure to check back on the sheet throughout the day because all those highlighted plays on the left-hand side will be updated. So without further ado, just kind of get into the slate. So tonight we got a big 11-game slate. We got 2 teams on a back-to-back, Portland and Toronto, and 4 other teams in the 3rd and 4 nights. That's Milwaukee, Detroit, New Orleans, and Utah. I guess before I get into any of the injuries, do you look closely at back-to-backs on 3rd and 4 nights?
Yeah, totally. And I also, another thing that I look at is whether a team is on the front end of a back-to-back, because, that affects coaches' decisions on certain guys, whether they're going to rest. It affects fourth quarter rotations if the game's not necessarily like very close, and the coach decides to maybe rest the starter a little bit extra because he knows he's got a game tomorrow. Or maybe the opposite. Maybe the game really is very competitive and the coach didn't expect that and he has to play a guy a little bit more than he would have liked. And, you got to know that going into the next night. So, yeah, absolutely. That's valuable info.
Awesome. So, yeah, that's just something I added actually just today to the NBA cheat sheet. So you can kind of check it out without having to do pretty much why I have the cheat sheet there is just to kind of reduce the research that the customers have to do on a daily basis, puts everything all on one screen that you can see. So getting into the injuries, a couple that pop up right away, got Victor Oladipo. He practiced Tuesday, but I'm kind of hearing that he's unlikely to play Wednesday. Have you heard any more on that? And how does that really affect?
I heard even if he does miraculously play, he'll be on a pretty strict minutes restriction. He's been out for a while now, so when guys like that are out for a while, they don't just come back in and like run 40 minutes on the court. So he's someone I have zero interest in, even if he does play, because he'll be eased back. Guys like, he's been out for a while at this point. That's not really an injury that DraftKings hasn't caught up to. When a guy like that's been out for a while, they've done pretty well at pricing, the other guys that are kind of filling in for Oladipo's usage and his production. So yeah, I mean, let me pull up Tyreek's price exactly. I mean, guys like Tyreek have been around between like 47 to like 5,200 for a couple weeks now. And he's going to have a couple games for you where he exceeds value, but Milwaukee's been a very good defensive team this year. And that's not the reason that I don't want Tyreek, but in terms of Oladipo's injury, it doesn't mean much for me. Sabonis is someone who I always like. His price is just a little too high. So until there's an injury to Miles Turner, we'll see about him, or like Thad Young. But for now, I don't have much interest in this game.
Cool. And then moving on, I want to get your take on Antetokounmpo for Milwaukee. He was a late scratch on Monday. Really burned a lot of people. He did say his neck was fine. So it was likely like a precautionary scratch, I guess, on Monday. He is likely to return tonight. Are you interested in him if he does return to the court tonight?
Yeah, I'll have some exposure to Giannis. Or Giannis, I think is the right way. But he's probably he's on the lower end of where I'm interested in terms of superstars tonight. Joel Embiid is the guy who catches my eye immediately, just because Brooklyn is one of those. Man, I'm blanking on what the terminology is. It's like whatever. Whenever I see Brooklyn, I think centers. It's like in football when you see a certain team and you target tight ends against those teams.
It is a terrific matchup.
Yeah, that is one way to say it. Yeah, that's basically what I'm trying to say. So with Brooklyn, I target centers and big men. Especially when they're the focal point of the team's offense, as well as the fact that Jimmy Butler is most likely going to miss the game tonight. So that creates an even better situation for Mr. Embiid. Brooklyn is an interesting team because not only do they struggle against the centers, but they're not bad. They're really not a pushover of a team. Even with Karis LeVert being hurt, probably their best player, they stay in it. They compete enough for starters and people like Embiid to not only have to play one half or something silly like that. And they play very fast. So I think this will be I have a ton of interest in this game tonight in terms of Brooklyn-Toronto, for sure.
Right on. And then another big one tonight that we're going to be watching, second of a back-to-back, is the Raptors. Kawhi was out last night, maybe because they wanted him in tonight's big matchup. But I think he's probably going to return from what I've been reading.
Yeah,
are you interested in him? I don't think it's an injury.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they weren't going to play him in a back-to-back, and definitely, I'm sure, especially if he had any say in it, he would prefer to play against the champs than against the Clippers.
Yeah, no doubt.
And they got the win without him, so good coaching.
Yep. And then John Wall, the Wiz didn't practice on Tuesday, but he is probable to play tonight for Washington. Is he someone that's on your radar at all?
No, I don't have much interest in John Wall, probably until he gets traded. I know for a fact that, I know for a fact, like I had to speak to the guys, but it's been pretty well reported at this point for a while that just that Wizards locker room is really not getting along. John Wall is someone who seems to just not get along with some of the other guys in there. And last year, if you remember, when he was injured for a good portion of the season, the Wizards played very, very well. And a lot of people were saying that a big reason for that was because of, I'm sorry for the messages you guys hear popping up in the background. I'm not sure how to really turn that off.
That's me typing.
Yeah, it's all good. I'm not sure how to turn that off without turning off all my sound, but you'll forgive me. But anyway, my point being is I'm not too interested in John Wall. Kyrie is a pretty terrible defender. So he does have a decent matchup against the Boston team. That's no, they're not on a back-to-back, but they're better options tonight, in my opinion. I'm more interested in seeing where the value opens up because my gut on this slate was stars and scrubs. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's a very tough matchup as well. Like Boston is number one against
Kyrie's
point guards this
a good
season.
personal matchup, but Boston going into, or even just playing Boston, they win games. They don't just get run off the court by anybody.
For sure. And then up next on the list here, got Otto Porter. He missed Monday's game. He's questionable for Wednesday with a bruised knee. Is he someone you're kind of targeting? Does that make any sense? Does that help anybody else if he does miss tonight?
No, definitely it does. I'm not targeting him. That's what I was trying to say no to for similar reasons to what we just discussed with Wall. Not so much on the social issues, but more just because he's a little banged up. Boston's a tough team to play against. He's going to have some combination of Tatum and Brown and Morris on him, or Hayward if Hayward plays. So, there's no walk in the park when you go up against Boston. And then on top of it, though, what I will be paying attention to, if Otto Porter is ruled out, which I don't expect him to be, but if he is ruled out, that's I'll definitely look at Jeff Green at 3,600 because he's someone who would see upwards of 30 minutes if Otto was out, even if he doesn't start, which he probably would start. But even if it's Oubre, Jeff Green's still a good play. And then obviously, like we just mentioned, Kelly Oubre Jr. is someone that I also will be have some exposure to if Otto is ruled out. But none of these guys are like core plays or people I'm stuffing in there.
Right. So someone who's up next, there's someone who's had a pretty good matchup looking at the numbers like over the last week, 4 or 5 games. Mike Conley tonight. He's questionable as well. He left with this left hamstring soreness that he aggravated Monday. If he's back, is he someone you're looking at that position as well?
Yeah, I think he's been upgraded to probable because he went through shoot around. So I do expect Conley to play tonight. Portland played last night, so they should have a little bit tired legs coming on a back-to-back. He's not someone who I'm like building around or absurdly excited about, but I do think Conley is a nice GPP play tonight. He's pretty perfectly priced, and Memphis is a tough team to kind of like pick and choose when they're going to have, because they do randomly have very good offensive nights where Conley and Gasol are like two of the guys you see in the winning GPP lineups. So I think it's definitely a sharp take for you to bring Conley up. I just personally, he's not someone that I get very excited about. But that being said, I do think he's very consistent, and I would trust that he hits value tonight.
For sure. So the next one I'm looking at, I found, there's multiple injuries for Cleveland right now. We've got Kevin Love. He's out till like mid-January. We've got Tristan Thompson. He's out till, I think, 2 to 4 weeks. And then we got David. I'm going to go with this name. I'm going to say Nwaba.
Yeah.
Probably wrong. He's questionable with a knee injury. With all those, let's just say that he's going to be out. Who are you really looking at? Like, are you interested in like Larry Nance Jr., Sexton, maybe Burks, Clarkson?
Yeah, Nance should definitely get a little bit of a bump. Tristan Thompson's out for a month and a half or something like that now. But I'll give you a name in this game that I think you'll see a lot of tonight in some of the sharper, more expensive tournaments. But I'm blanking. I don't know his first name, but his last name is Blossom Game. He is.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Jaron or something like that. Something with a J, Blossom Game with Cleveland. He's a rookie for them, second-round rookie. His minutes have been trending up, and his production has been trending up. He's coming off a couple really good games now that he's finally getting his opportunity, and they need people to put out on the court. Let's see if I can find his oh no, that's why, because I'm looking at point guards. Okay.
He's super cheap. He's 3,900 on FanDuel and 34 on DK.
Yeah, exactly. So there's someone who's close to minimum price. He should see a ton of minutes tonight, especially now with Tristan Thompson being ruled out too. I'm not sure if Ante Zizic is there. Like, not that he matters very much, but they're going to need big bodies. So especially if Zizic is out, I expect Blossom Game to maybe even start tonight, truthfully. And he's someone who, even if he doesn't start, he's cheap enough and the minutes are there, and he will be a mainstay in a lot of my GPP lineups tonight.
Yeah, it's a very tight spread, and New York offers awesome matchup, like across the board, pretty much. I'm seeing here, like they're outside 20th, looking at fantasy points against all positions except shooting guard. So yeah, I definitely like that call. That's definitely a play that can help you get to multiple superstars in your lineup tonight.
Correct, and as mentioned before,
Love it.
The stars and scrubs night. So
yep. Another injury, couple for Boston. Al Horford. He is questionable. He's missed prior 2 games of the knee injury. He's probably not going to play tonight. I'm reading. Gordon Hayward, he's doubtful with an illness. They don't really say what it is, but he also missed Monday's game there as well. What are you looking at in the Boston? I think Boston kind of let everybody down the other night, all the cheap guys. So what are you kind of looking at from the Celtics tonight?
Excuse me. Were they playing again? I'm blanking. Sorry.
Washington.
Right?
In Washington.
So if Porter plays and Wall's all good, there's no reason that this shouldn't be a close game. But, so assuming it's a close game, I do like all of Boston's starters, whoever that may be. If Baines gets the bump, I like him a lot just because Thomas Bryant is kind of a joke of a matchup. He's very easy, and I consider that someone who, if I were the coach going up against Washington, that's who I would give the ball to. If I had any sort of above-average center, I would be like, all right, go to work and just, man this guy, because Bryant is young and doesn't have much experience, not very good. He's stepping in for Dwight Howard, and even before Dwight went down, Washington wasn't being big wasn't their strength. I remember them being, excelling when they play small ball and run very fast, and just John Wall. John Wall is one of the fastest guys in the NBA with the basketball. So I don't think having big men or big centers really fits them. So I like whoever starts for Boston tonight at center, and depending on if Gordon Hayward plays, I like Theis. But we'll see.
That's what I was just going to ask you about.
But I don't know. I mean, I have no recency bias with Theis, so it doesn't bother me that he didn't hit value the other night. But what does bother me is that since he went for that 30-point game or whatever he did, his price is now bumped up where DraftKings almost expects that. And he has to have a really good night just to hit value now. I don't like that.
Which is pretty much GPP only is what you're describing right there.
I'd rather go Aaron Baines tonight. If I were coaching and Horford's out, Aaron Baines is who I'm starting.
Yeah, he looks like he's questionable too, but it says he's likely to play, so not too worried about that. And he's been a little bit more consistent looking at his fantasy point production when he's getting the 20+ minutes and stuff. So definitely like that call. We do have a question.
Theis. Yeah, sorry, keep going.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, look, I think a big part of why Theis let everyone down the other night is because he was going up against Anthony Davis. Not only is that one of the best players in the NBA, but it's one of the best big men in the NBA, defensively and offensively. So, the more I looked at it, and I guess I was a little rushed at the time, and I kind of drank the Kool-Aid and thought Theis was a great play too, like everybody else. But one of the things you have to think about is who the guy is physically, literally facing that night. And, I'm not going to target people going up against Anthony Davis unless it's DeMarcus Cousins in a hypothetical world. That's kind of a cool matchup, or Andre Drummond and Embiid are fine to target against each other. But I'm not going out of my way to target a cheap punt guy against a superstar.
Makes a lot of sense. So we had a question come in here. We already went over the Cleveland guys here, but one that you didn't mention that he's asking about is C.D. Osman. Now, what I see here, he's had 20-plus fantasy points in 4 straight and 5 of his last 6 games, and he's getting 30-plus minutes almost every single time. And he's very cheap, like 4,300 on DraftKings. Is he someone that kind of stands out to you maybe as another one of those punt plays that we can get in our lineups tonight?
If he's 43, I guess his price has been dropping a little bit, so he's someone who is interesting to me. Like, he's not – I wasn't even considering him when he was like $5,000 and 52. Like, that was gross. But if he's 42, I mean, they're running out of physical bodies in Cleveland. So, yeah, that does interest me.
Awesome. Yeah, that was a very good question. I started looking at the game logs and stuff once he asked that question. I was like, I better ask him just because it looks like he stands out as a consistent play, especially under 5K and on DraftKings, especially at 4,300. So cool. Up next, Nikolai Mirotic for New Orleans. I think he's ruled out Wednesday. How does that going to affect New Orleans rotations?
I mean, Julius Randle will probably be the highest owned player tonight, is what I'll say, especially in cash.
Cool.
Because of that. He's still too cheap. He's obviously not like, 5K or something silly because, Mirotic has kind of been out a lot recently. So DraftKings is like not completely off of it. They're on top of it. This is not completely out of left field, let's say. But Julius Randle, I think it's the highest over-under of the night. Both teams play extremely fast. And there will be a lot of points scored in this game. So especially when Mirotic is out, and then especially when Randall's a starter, I don't have his averages in front of me, but I'm sure his averages alone as a starter, and then on top of it, with Mirotic out in a high-paced game with a lot of points, I'm sure they would well exceed his price on DraftKings and FanDuel.
For sure. So the next one I'm looking at, going over to the Minnesota Timberwolves, Robert Covington is probable for Wednesday. It looks like he left early on Monday's game. But just kind of looking at it, 5,700 on DraftKings, he's got 5-6x upside, maybe even 7 there. He's got some 30 and 40-point games. Is he someone you're maybe waiting to see a game as he's coming back, or are you going to be jumping on to him at the small forward, power forward position on DraftKings?
Honestly, I wouldn't even have noticed his name tonight if you didn't mention it to me. He's someone who my projections just really don't like at all, so I'm assuming that's because of the matchup. I don't know, to be honest. It's a little surprising because I would have thought people in this game are, it's a high-scoring game, fast-paced game. So it's something I have to do a little bit more research into. But right here, the projections that I, don't live and die by, but do respect, absolutely hate him. So I'm not. I would expect about 4.5x from him tonight. That'd be my call.
Okay, cool. I got him listed. I listed him as a GPP play. I was just kind of, I guess you call myself a novice when it comes to NBA.
I didn't make you
this season.
Make it seem like that at all. Because like for the viewers, like Chris is, he's killing, hockey, soccer, golf, all the shit that I know zero about. This guy is becoming our most versatile, just member of RotoPros here. So, our partner, one of our core contributors. So definitely, it's a valid question. I'm a little surprised myself to see that the projections are this low on him, but that's just, I'm not considering him.
I was just going to mention the only reason I listed him as a GPP and put him on my list tonight was just he's averaging over 34 minutes per game on the season. And the matchup actually did stand out to me as Sacramento is 21st against small forwards. Now, I guess that's a question for you. I see he's listed small forward, power forward. Where does he play more his minutes?
No, he's more of a 3. He's more of a small forward for sure. So it's not a Chris. Sometimes what's the saying? Wisdom oft comes from the mouth of babes or something. So maybe
I like it.
Maybe it's good to have someone in here to get me to think a little bit differently and bring up some guys that wouldn't necessarily catch my eye, because the truth is the logic makes sense there. Covington's a small forward, especially for Minnesota. They usually run Taj Gibson at the 4 and Karl Towns at the 5. So, and then on top of it, Thibodeau, their coach, is known for kind of running his starters into the ground. So Covington should be very consistent in terms of his minutes. And the matchup is there, and it's a high over-under. So that's someone that you can look at as a GPP play.
Cool. And then another player that you had listed here, Etwan Moore for New Orleans. I know we talked about New Orleans a little bit, but is he someone you're maybe looking at getting in if he's out? And then on the other hand, if he's back in, and if he is out, Monday when he was out, it looked like Solomon Hill got around 20 minutes, and then Darius Miller was kind of a surprise, I guess. He got 27 off the bench. Are you interested in either of those two guys if Moore's out again?
I hope Moore plays, truthfully, because if he does, even though the projections don't like him very much, I can see him having a pretty good night. We already know Mirotic is out, and there's going to be a lot of points scored in this game. So, Anthony Davis
and he's so cheap.
Right, exactly. He's so cheap. Anthony Davis, Julius Randle, Drew Holiday, they're all going to have their hands full, and they all can't score 50 points each. So, even if Etwan Moore hits, 3 or 4 or more 3-pointers, gets a couple of steals, a couple of boards, couple of assists along the way. He's got pretty good upside, I think, and we've seen him have some pretty good games this year in high-paced matchups such as this. So I would be more interested in Etwan if he plays, but if he doesn't play, people like Solomon, I'll forever hate Solomon Hill from I was in championship a couple years ago when. Basically, long story short, because of some injuries, Dante Cunningham and Solomon Hill were the two punts of the night in the championship. And people with multiple lineups had one Hill lineup and one Cunningham lineup. But unfortunately, I was forced to make the tough decision and went with Cunningham, who was the starter out of the two. And then although Cunningham did hit value and get about 6x, I believe, Solomon Hill went for a triple-double. And him that night obviously finished in the top 10. So
yeah, that'll hurt.
Yeah, that was tough. And it's funny too, because my good friend Greg Ehrenberg was working with us at the time, and I remember this true story. I remember messaging him, and again, I don't blame him because I agree with this. But I messaged him before the night, and I said Solomon Hill and Cunningham. That's doesn't really matter, right? They're kind of the same thing, same person. And his response was they could switch jerseys and no one would notice on the court. And I love that because they don't look alike, but they're the exact same type of player. They're just these 3 guards, 3-4 guard, small forward, power forward guys who they're just in there to play defense, spot up and hit some 3-pointers, and maybe get some rebounds. But, for whatever freaking reason, the gods just lined up for Solomon Hill that night, and he literally triple-doubled for probably the only time in his career. So I'll never forget that one. But anyway, I digress.
No, it's a good story. I love it. Yeah. So the last guy here that we'll talk about, Reggie Bullock. He went from doubtful to questionable with an ankle injury because he was there for shoot-around this morning. If he gets back in there, I'm just kind of looking at the matchup here. Detroit is a 5.5-point underdog in a fairly high-scoring game tonight. So it looks like they're going to be playing catch-up, and he's got a good matchup against Charlotte, who is ranked outside the top 20 in fantasy points against shooting guards and small forwards. I see that he's listed at both on DraftKings, so I list both of those off. Well, they've been pretty tough against point guards and power forward. So if he's back in there, is he someone that's going to be on your radar tonight?
No, I care more about Bullock because if Bullock is out, then I would consider playing Luke Kennard, who is 3,500 and who kind of has a pretty similar function, I guess, for the Pistons. They're relied upon for their outside shooting and scoring, but obviously I will stress that I don't expect any sort of production similar to what Kennard did in his last game. That will not happen again, especially tonight. Blake Griffin was being rested, and Bullock was out. There were a couple other guys. It was just the stars aligned. So, I don't say this because I expect Kennard to have a massive night or anything silly like that, but 3,500, he's still pretty cheap. There's always the small chance that he does just have a great night because he's feeling good and playing well. But what I do, if Bullock is out and Kennard's in the starting lineup, or, he's getting a little bit of extra minutes because of Bullock's injury, then yeah, I do think he's an interesting GPP play and someone with good upside for his price. But I do expect Blake Griffin and Drummond and Reggie Jackson to take 80% of the shots tonight.
Awesome. And is there anyone else that I maybe didn't have on my list here that you're kind of watching closely tonight? I think we kind of covered pretty much all the main injuries.
Yeah, sorry. Let me just I have an interest in Check Diallo. He's a minimum price big man for the Pelicans. So he'll get a minutes bump and a usage bump most likely. Just because Oklahoma City has some big men on the bench, so it's going to require New Orleans to throw some big men too, and obviously Randall and Anthony Davis can't play the entire game. So Check Diallo, he's minimum price, and I like him tonight to get to come in and give them a little bit of a spark. I will say in the Atlanta-Dallas game, I like to target people on Dallas's whatever team is going against Atlanta. I like to target bench players on that team because there's a lot. Not only is Atlanta's bench pretty miserable at defense, but a lot of times Atlanta gets blown out, and the people on the bench of their opponent get a little bit of extra run in the fourth quarter, which can, really be the difference a lot of nights in terms of a guy hitting value or, going crazy and being the difference in you taking down a GPP. So I have a little bit of interest in Dallas bench, like Dwight Powell, and Jalen Brunson should be starting tonight. So he's not really a bench player, but he's priced like a bench player. So I think, normally Dallas is very slow pace and I don't really like to target them, but there's some fantasy goodness to be had there. I do like Seda Osman, like the guy mentioned earlier. I'm not sure who asked that question, but he projects for, close to 35 minutes tonight, maybe even more. So, he's at a proper price for that. That's about it. I think you did pretty good on the front for sure.
And then just looking at some of these games, one that stood out to me like right away tonight was the OKC. Like you were talking about doing stars and scrubs. So myself, I'm kind of looking at the stars from the OKC New Orleans game just because it's got the highest over under. Both teams are projected for over 115 points.
Oh, sorry,
just a 2-point spread.
Giannis is in, by the way. He's been confirmed.
He's in now?
Yeah.
Awesome. And out of the 5 games that have a 220 or higher, 6 games, that have a 220 or higher over under tonight, there's only 2 that have close spread. And by close spread, I'm usually looking at like 4.5, 5 points. Yeah. And that's your Boston, Washington, and OKC, New Orleans. So, I mean, if those games are going to be close and really high scoring shootouts like that, those are definitely the teams that I'm going to be targeting for the most part. You can definitely find value in some of these other games, guys, that you've talked about to help fit those top players in. And vice versa. I mean, this kind of GPP strategy does run across multiple sports. Is those guys are obviously going to be chalk tonight. Looking at your Anthony Davis and looking at your Russell Westbrook and stuff. You can definitely make pivots off those guys if you want, and target some of these other games they're going to be, and find some lower ownership. Like Joel Embiid, we talked about. He's probably going to be what do you think? Maybe the highest owned
I think center on the slate. Pretty highly owned tonight, just because not only is it probably the best matchup, but Jimmy Butler's out too. If it was only one of those things, then he wouldn't be as highly owned. But with both of them, he's going to be very high.
So I personally think, and I'll ask your opinion on this before we go, is pivoting to in some of your GPPs. Like if I'm running 10 lineups in GPP, I would probably run Embiid in like, I don't know, 4 or 5, expecting his own, so you have a little bit more than the field, and then probably split it up a little bit. Andre Drummond's someone who's on my radar, right in that same price range, a little bit of a discount on DraftKings, so he might be a little bit higher owned there. But on FanDuel at only $1,200 less, I think he makes a good pivot. He's also got a good matchup.
Totally, yeah. Andre Drummond's a good call, and maybe even someone like Karl Anthony Towns. Sometimes when you see, like speaking to the strategy like you're talking about, looking at the guy that's closest in price can be interesting because it's kind of someone who's not going to catch your opposition's eye. So Towns being $500 cheaper than Embiid, he's not someone who's jumping off the charts for me in projections, but like you said, he's definitely going to be lower owned of the two and makes for an interesting GPP pivot for sure.
Right on. Well, that pretty much covers everything for today. Thanks for tuning into our first NBA show. We're going to be trying to do this same time, 3 p.m. Eastern on Wednesdays and Fridays, and just kind of going over the injury news. Make sure if you got questions, jump in to the chat on the right. I'm going to be following along with that. And if you're not a RotoPros member, make sure to get over to the site, sign up for your free 2-week trial. Gives you access to all our premium content, one-on-one coaching, skeleton lineups, cheat sheets, all that kind of stuff. I think you're going to stick around after that, after you see what we all have to offer. And with that, let's go make some lineups and see some green screens tonight, everyone. Good luck. Thanks for joining me, Josh.
Thank you, Chris. Great job, and it was a pleasure.
Peace.